Hi everyone, this is Sunette, and in this video we are continuing with living words, the process that's involved with living words. And in this video I'm going to be opening up some more dimensions to consider when and as you get to the phase of actually practicing the living of the words that you have redefined from the first step that we've taken, which was defining, purifying the words. Now, in this process, also what stands out and what I've thoroughly enjoyed is when I reflect on a process of words that I've defined, purified, redefined, and lived. Just seeing how, especially when I look back and see who I was and who I've become. And that moment there is the most rewarding. So, when I oftentimes reflect and look back on the path and the journey and the process that I've walked, the ups and the downs, and I see who I am and how I am today within looking at very specific certain words. But not only that, also how I have affected change within moments, within other people. That as well is quite a gift. So a point to also look at in terms of why walk this process is that you start seeing, realizing, and understanding how you are the directive principle, the creative force within and behind your emerging of your utmost potential within you, of a potential even within you. I mean, sometimes within this defining, redefining, and living word process, we go into our minds, and our minds have got a tendency to want to already know the outcome before we've even started. But and I've played with it sometimes, like when you get to defining and purifying a word, where you get to understand who you are as a word right now, and then into the redefining process. You already, when you start redefining a word within yourself, what comes up and comes out there is potential within you. You see a potential becoming of you within yourself. Now, I've sometimes fell there, fell meaning made the mistake of when I get into the practicing or the living of the word, I try and already, become the potential that I had seen in my mind's eye or envisioned within my mind while redefining the word. So this is one dimension I'm going to explain right now and also give an example of where I also mentioned this in previous videos when it came to starting new ventures, learning something new. Really, you're an absolute beginner. You know absolutely nothing. And having to do that in front of a lot of people. I used to, and this is now me working through also my memories in my teenage childhood years where I used to play netball. And I remember joining in the team, much later in the year. So I already had a team. I'd never held a ball like that or understood the rules or the dynamics or the relationships, nothing. So there's me starting new as a beginner, and obviously also looking at the teenage mind and emotional dynamics. I was often laughed at or made jokes of, or had so many embarrassing moments, then had everyone around me seeing it happen. So from those experiences throughout my life, I developed a fear of starting something new and really being an absolute beginner, knowing absolutely nothing in front of a whole lot of people. So within this process that I've walked, I defined, redefined, and walked my process of living that point of who I am within learning something new, and in front of a lot of people. So then in my definition purification process, walked through all my memories, and released some of the emotional experiences that I've had within myself, focusing more on the fact that, okay, I'm learning something new for me. Yes, I am an absolute beginner, but whatever I am learning and walking into, and my journey, my process and journey through that, I will advance. I will become better. I'll become more skilled, more talented. The more I focus on myself, my fitness, the rules, the dynamics, the relationships. So, I must just set my mind to that, set myself to that. Then in the redefinition process, that's essentially what I decided to do, so that whenever I'm starting something new, learning way in the beginning, I focus on myself. I remember my end goal, but I must take steps to do that. So what I decided to do was, whenever I start something new and I'm in the beginning stages of it, I'm going to create like a goal sheet for myself. So, okay, this is where I'm at right now. What do I need to perfect? Do I need to work on? Do I need to excel in? How can I start building up my fitness? So create a plan so that, whenever these embarrassing moments or the fears or being laughed at or being joked around with comes up in real time, I just close my eyes, I remind myself, okay, remember, this is your plan, this is for you, right? And already, while I was redefining my relationship to learning something new, I could already envision, myself being there like a boss, I'm learning something new, it's doing it for me. I'm not going to let joking or embarrassing moments or being made fun of get to me at all. I can already see it, envision it, and how I'm going to excel. I'm going to be the best in what I'm doing and what I'm learning, and the mind can play out so many visions, and it makes you feel good, it kind of motivates you. So then came the time where I finally got to the practicing of this living of the words. This is also something that you can take with you in defining, redefining, and living words, where sometimes you'll walk that process and only get to the redefinition process, but you can't yet practice or live it because, your life hasn't yet, let's say, brought the opportunity to do so. So I walked that process, and then there was a time where I could learn something new, and interestingly enough, it was also with and in front of many people. And not only that, I was placed in a situation where I couldn't even actually properly learn how to do the certain activity. I had to just kind of walk in and already start competing with people who has played for like weeks or months, sometimes even years. So I was really thrown into the deep end. And I had lots of people watching me, participating in this competition, kind of learning as I'm going, trying to find my feet, hearing some laughter and comments. And so immediately I found myself there in everything going the complete opposite as I had envisioned and imagined in my redefining process. So I did go back to my old patterns, but after the second game that I played, I just closed my eyes, breathed, and I reminded myself, okay, come on, you're practicing the living of this word for the first time. So remember your redefinition process. What did you write? And then I managed to slowly drop, all my reactions and insecurities and inferiorities and embarrassing experiences, nervousness, anxiety, because I just kept on reminding myself, okay, you're starting new, you're focusing what's your plan, rather than focus on everyone else and how bad you are right now. Rather look at learning from this first experience. Remember mistakes you've made, things that you forgot, this and that, so that you know now from this moment what you need to work on for the next time. So that just giving you a practical example of not to focus too much on the visions that you do see of the potential that you can become, that comes up in your mind while you're doing the redefining process, because reality is going to be completely different. as it always is. We also sometimes do it in the opposite way, where this just giving you more of a perspective, where we sometimes imagine something's going to be so bad, and then you get to the actual event or with the person or the situation, and it's actually a lot better than you could have ever imagined. So it's that kind of game that we tend to play because our minds are not yet very much practiced into reality, and this also comes with time. Because now I'm quite proficient at my redefinition process in a way where I can redefine it a lot more realistically and practically. But at the same time, what I do is I write down the potentials that I do see for myself, because those potentials I then use as my motivation in my practicing and living process in real time, because our minds tend to forget how space and time works. In our minds we can see already the potential that we can possibly become, and oftentimes after I've really practiced and lived a word for months, I go back and just have a look at the potentials that I did initially see, and my living potential actually superseded the potential that I could have ever imagined. It actually became so much more. Other times it was actually quite accurate, surprisingly, which means that we do already have that inherent potential within us. We can see it, it's here, it's within us, it already exists. That's why it's already coming up in our minds. But now the process of embodying, of making that potential real, is a process. You've got to remember space and time. It is going to take time. And the time factor is also the next dimension that I can open up because we oftentimes are like, why is this taking so long? Why can't I just take that potential that I'm seeing and just, imprint it into myself, into my body, and voila. Oh, like the Matrix uploads, where they just upload the program and then you can do it. Would have made life so much easier. But at the same time, what I've realized is why that cannot happen is because in real time moments in everyday life, the more you practice living a word, there's actually also in those real time moments things inside yourself that you still have to go through and learn from and process through for that potential to completely and absolutely come through you and your living to become natural. So this process of defining, redefining, and living words, each step is a complete process in itself till you eventually become your utmost potential naturally. So that's like your end result. There is one thing that assisted and supported me, just quickly opening up the time dimension while we're here, is that I never placed a time factor on reaching or attaining a living of a word. What I would do, though, is whenever I had the opportunity to practice the living of the word, I would do it. And it's fascinating with aligning my mind, myself, in that way of just every moment when I can practice the living of this word, I do so. That it helps with, not wanting it to be done now. It should have been changed, and this should have been this way or that way, and kind of going into a conflictual relationship with time instead of using time as it exists. What do I mean by that? Use time as it exists. You have time in that one day, that every day that you have to practice the living of a specific word. All right. So before I continue more on the time dimension, just to round off a bit in relation to that experience of the potential visions that you see. So this is another addition I'd like to mention in the redefinition process, that as you're redefining a word and you do see the potential that you can become, write it down. I potentially see that with practicing living this word, this is what I can become, this is the goal, this is more like a guideline. All right, use those potentials that you see in your mind purely as a guideline. Don't make it an absolute, because otherwise within that you can also limit yourself. Then you don't allow for more room and space within yourself to actually even reach more than that potential, or just that potential but in a different way, right? So just use it as a guideline. So in other words, whenever I had tough times with living words and redefining words, more the practicing of them, where I just sometimes really got into situations where my old definition and programming of a word, my old self within a word would just come up, that I would just go back to my redefinition process, see how I can make it more practical, and also read the potential that I saw, remember that potential, and then use that as a motivation to assist and support you in your process of practicing living words. All right, now getting into the time dimension. So here, again, what I would suggest doing is, as I mentioned in the previous videos where we went on to the emotion of anger, where it's to remember that you can already envision how much more calm, centered, stable, and grounded you can be in a moment instead of reacting in anger. That potential exists within us. That's why you could already see it and envision it within you. But when it comes to being confronted with anger in real-time moments in everyday life, you will not initially be calm or stable or grounded. You've got to practice it. And those are the moments, that is the time that you have to practice it and keep on practicing it as much as possible in your everyday life. Keep it to day. I mean, like, for example, the process that I shared with you with new beginnings. I mean, that I was only in that situation like once a week. So essentially, I only had once a week to, in real time, practice that who I am within learning something new. So therefore, it did take a bit longer to, from then, whenever I started anything new or learned something new, it was a lot more natural for me. I didn't go into the insecurities or anxieties or inferiorities or nervousness and things like that, because I had quite some time to practice this very one kind of traumatic experience, being thrown into the deep end. That's why I also appreciate those moments of what I call being thrown into the deep end, where you're facing something properly and effectively, because there it really pushes you to stand, to change, to move. And it the remembrance of that experience penetrates your very fiber of your being, your very existence, in a way where you learn it once, you learn it properly, and then it's done. And then it helps you in so many other areas of your life experience as well. All right, so here in the videos that we've walked thus far, we've covered so many dimensions in relation to the process of defining, purifying, redefining, and now practicing the living of words. All the videos thus far setting a foundation of what we're walking here with soul when it comes to words, and how we can change and create ourselves through words and our everyday life experiences. Ooh, this actually reminds me now of one more dimension I'd like to cover in this video while we're here, is the dimension of that point within you of creating yourself, right? Because we oftentimes, get so lost in our experiences within us that we think, this is who we are, this is how we're going to be, and that's it. But remember that you've got the potential to change, to create yourself, and this is through words. And I would like each one of you to, for this video, until we continue on into the next, have a look at listing for yourself, the things inside yourself, about yourself and your life that you still struggle with, within you. And have a look at what words can you start defining, redefining, and living instead, to start this process of change, of creating yourself. Utilizing the information that we've given in the defining, purifying, redefining, and now the living of words. And another technique that you can also use within this process is having a look at how within the redefining and living of words, you can use your physical body, or even activities, moments of things that you can do to help as a platform for living words. Like, for example, I had a tendency of being exceptionally hard on myself, really, really very, very hard. Meaning I judge myself severely when I made a mistake or did something wrong or not right, not perfect, you know. Then I'd go, you're not good enough, and why are you even trying, and you're so useless and worthless. No, it was bad. So that being so intense and being so hard on myself, I started defining, redefining, and living the word gentleness. And I, in my early childhood years, teenage years, used to do ballet. And ballet, in its very application, has got intensity to it, but also grace and gentleness and flow. So whenever I would find it be hard on myself, and I couldn't, and it was intense, and I couldn't access that gentleness immediately within me, or that grace, or that flow, I would actually do some ballet exercises to, within the movement of the ballet and the music as well, just, align myself into the embodiment of the experience of gentleness, grace, and flow. And then once I have that experience and sensation within me, I would look at, walking a process of letting go of being hard on myself, judging myself, breaking myself down, and rather assist and support myself to guide myself, correct myself, learn from a mistake, change from it. All right, so it's also another way where in the redefining and practicing and living of words, you can utilize activities, things in your everyday life to get access to a word that you want to live and experience and understand. All right, everyone. This is it for the soul video. Thank you very much for listening and walking with, and looking forward to having you join us for many more videos to come. Thank you very much.